So for example, let's open a file instead of this, because that's a little more easy to do this. So we already have the if dictionary has key. We're going to change that to key. My style of writing, if I'm like going weird, it's because I don't know how to describe it. So we wrote that again, and we have a dictionary. We're going to get rid of the user input because that's annoying, because I have to type things every time. And we're going to say define add to dictionary key value. So I get out of this function by just typing here again. You asked how to remove something from a dictionary, and I have not answered you yet. To be honest, I don't know, but let's Google it. Let me zoom out so I can actually read things. Cool. So delete statement, very easy. We're given a key, and we want to call delete on that key. Delete dictionary key. Ta-da! So I've now defined two functions for working with my dictionary. The second one's kind of not that great because I could have just called it wherever else, but let's keep it this way. Why not?
Sorry. That has key and append. These are statements from Python, or?
Yes. So has key and append all come from the Python docs. So let's look at documentation. I don't normally navigate it this way, so this is interesting. Let's see how this works. Nope. Not going to do that. I just Google things because that's how I find stuff. So Python, dictionary, documentation. And first thing, data structures. Excellent. So we can look at it and it goes more on lists, which means there's another one about lists somewhere. And I know you guys can't read this stuff particularly well, so I'd recommend going to it yourself because there's a lot of things here, so zooming in doesn't make as much sense. But essentially, all of these are list dot something. Extend, append, remove, insert, pop, index, count, sort, reverse. You can reverse a list, but not a string. So could we convert a string into a list and then reverse the list and then convert it back to a string? Yes. That's another way to do it. Or we can do it the way we did it earlier. Go ahead.
Right. Now, if we want to run this function every time when the system starts up, can we add it to the bash or something?
Yes. So if I want to run, this is a slight tangent. If you guys don't know Unix world, this might be a little bit over your head, and I'm not going to go super in depth, but if you want to do it for just your user, you have something in your home directory called, let's just pipe this to less, you have a file called, did I already pass it? Yes. Bash profile and bash RC. There's a difference between them, and I mix up which one's which, but bash profile is launched for all shells. Or yes, bash profile is launched for, or is read for all shells. Bash RC is only read for an interactive shell. The reason that's useful is I don't want to define all these aliases if it's only for a script that I'm going to automatically run or an SCP command. So if I'm doing copies, file transfer stuff, I don't want to set up all of my environment because I don't need it. But so every time I log in, if I want to run a command, I can just open my bash RC file, and I can add to the end of it something like Python, path to file.py. And it'll run at the end of your config. This is also really useful. Again, slight Unix diversion. You can do cool stuff like this export PS1. This changes your command prompt You can also change the Python command prompt. It was that like little arrow thing that we saw. This thing, there's ways to change it. I actually don't know how because I've never cared enough. But you can. So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Excellent. We've answered your question. Excellent. Are there more outstanding questions? Because questions are more fun.
What is the structure of if, else, and for?
Okay. So that's a pretty good one to do. So a for loop is for some iterable item. Do stuff. That's a for loop.
Can you give us an example?
Right, I'm going to give examples of that. If, condition, do stuff, elif, condition, other stuff, else, last result. You know, so these are the basic formats. So iterables is really kind of a vague term. This is where the duck typing comes in, because a list is iterable, or a string is iterable, or a lot of things are iterable. It's just something where we can take different pieces of it and go over each of the different pieces. For example, if I have a list, L is 10, 24, 38, and I want to add them all, I can iterate over that list. Well, first I need to close my quotes properly and take a dramatic drink break. So for entry in L, I'm going to say my sum is 0.
Are those strings or integers or what?
Those are strings, which I probably should just make them integers. That's a good point. There's a way to cast from string to integer, which is very easy. So let's make them strings. Sure. So those are strings, 10, 24, and 38. And I want to say for entry in L, which L is the list, my sum equals my sum plus int entry. That's it. That's just going to add every item in this 10, 24, 38. Now if I had something in there like cow or frog, I'm going to run into an issue because those aren't numbers and I can't cast them to a number, and I'm going to get an error that's going to be a type error probably, or a cast exception. I don't know. I actually don't know what that would be. Let's find out. Int frog. It's going to say value error, invalid literal for int with base 10. So I can't cast frog to base 10 because it's not a number. Let's go back into this. I'm going to comment out all these lines that don't do anything. Let's use a multi-line comment here. Ooh, turns it purple. That does depend on my color scheme though. Nope, still purple. Red. Alright, red's a good color. Nope, back to purple. It's the dark background, that's what does it. Anyways, doesn't matter. You see why I said I get onto tangents? So it's going to say our sum is 72, which sounds about right for those numbers. 10, 34, 34, 38, 72. Yeah. So that's a for loop. An if statement. I guess one of the canonical examples that I like is you're given somebody's grade. So for example, grade is 48. Now I'm going to show you another example of something that matters a lot in Python. So when I want to print out a string, I can concatenate these things, right? I'm going to run into a problem though, because Python is strictly typed. So this is what people confuse a lot. There's dynamic typing versus static typing and strict versus loose typing. So Python is strictly typed. I'm going to say string plus integer. And it's going to tell me, Sam, I don't know how to add a string and an integer. So I have to tell it manually, just make this a string, okay? So if somebody gets a grade of a 48, and I want to tell you what letter grade they got, I could probably do this as some kind of really cool dictionary thing, but instead of that, I'm going to make a function. So the function is grade to, or number to letter, number, grade to letter. I'm going to go with grade to letter. And it's going to take in a grade. And if grade is greater than 90, greater than or equal to, I suppose, then what do they get? An A? Otherwise, else if the grade is greater than or equal to 80, we get a B. And I'm just going to copy paste this a couple times. So if the grade is greater than or equal to 70, they get a C. If it's greater than or equal to 60, and then otherwise, they get an F. And then we have a grade of 48, and we want to print out grade to letter of grade. And since this is always returning a string, because these are all strings, this we don't need to cast to a string, because it already is a string.
Why do you need the plus?
We need the plus because, so they got an F. We know that, they got a 48. We need the plus because that's how we signify string concatenation. So concatenation is just you take one string and you stick it on the end of the other. And plus just means concatenate these two. It's the same reason that if I give you a number 3 and 4, I need to tell you what to do with 3 and 4. You should add them, you should multiply them, you should subtract them.
How do you make a function?
How do I give a function multiple output arguments? So this is a really cool question because in some languages you can't, in Python you can, which is awesome. So if I wanted instead, let's say for some reason I wanted to return, I don't know of a great example for this, but I can just change this to return like multiple arguments. I can just return A, B in a list if I choose. And let's give them a grade of 90, so that way we'll see that. And now it says list, so it can't concatenate them, so I do need to cast it. Look at that. So now it's going to say grade is A comma B because we returned a list of items. Let's say I don't want a list though. I just want 2 variables or 2 numbers or 2 letters or whatever. I can get rid of these brackets on the end and I can say first comma second equals grade to letter grade. The second line will probably give us a problem. No, okay. Oh, because it never printed that. But now first and second are just variables. One has A, the other has B. Does that make sense? Did I skip around too much there? I actually have a really good example of this in a project I did, now that I think about it. So this is a graphics thing. You might have seen me testing it at the beginning. I'm just going to show you what it does. We read in a file like bound sphere. Oh. Oh, bound low sphere. So this is just a list of vertices, and it's really long, and then a list of faces connecting those vertices. So it's saying we identify different vertices and then we connect them. And we turn that into an actual image, which is this in this case. So it's taking these points and actually drawing them on a screen. We have different parameters we can use, yada yada, not super important. But at some point in the program, I did something like this. Translate. So we take an x and a y coordinate. Let's get rid of the highlighting. We take an x and y and a dx and dy. Very simple function. And I did do this for a class. So where I use translate, I have a list of points, and I take the ith point, the x coordinate of it, and the y coordinate of it, and I translate it by, that's cut off on the side, cut off on my side too. There. So I take an x, y list of coordinates and I translate it by 1, 1. So I just move it over and up 1. But I just return it back to x, y. I then do some scaling. I translate it back. And then I put it back into the list. So here's a case where you can actually use that. We've got like 15 more minutes or so. So if anyone has places to be, I'm not going to hold you up. I appreciate you guys being here. Are there any other questions?
Can you make an example, please, when using the for and the while loop?
Can you say that again?
Can you make an example when using the for loop and the while loop?
Okay, so when should I use a for loop versus a while loop?
Yeah.
So for loops and while loops are essentially interchangeable. Any for loop can become a while loop. Any while loop can become a for loop, but it's not always a great idea. For example, I want to use a for loop when I know what I'm going to iterate over. So I can always, like if I have something like a list of items and I want to print out those list of items, I want to iterate over them. Easy. That's a for loop because it's always like there's 7 items or there's 8 items, whatever it is in that list. We know how many before we start. But let's say I want to talk to the user and I say, this is one example. It's not always with user interaction, but an example of it might be while answer does not equal yes, or actually let's do like quit. So I say that, and I could say, tell me about your day, or enter quit to quit. And if I do this, I'm just going to keep reading in data from people. Oh, I need a very important difference. I'm just going to keep reading in data from the command line until somebody tells me to quit. So an example of a while loop might be a case where we don't know when to stop. Or stopping is defined by some other constraint that's not necessarily us. You can also just say while true, which means I'm going to lie to you, and it'll just keep going forever, regardless of whether you say quit. So that's a nice thing to do to people. Makefiles for Python are very easy. So a makefile is essentially a target representation where we identify targets that we want to run, and then we tell it how to run them. So if I was to say make run, it'll launch another target called clean. In this case, this actually isn't a good example. So this just says we have a target called execute. If I type in make execute, it'll run this command. We have to have these things in existence for this to work though, otherwise it'll fail. There's technically some files create a PYC, which is a compiled Python file, so if you have a clean target, you just need to remove the PYC files. And that's it. It's pretty easy. I had another question. Yes, no, maybe the last. Okay. Oh, that was really all the things I wanted to say. Slightly louder.
When I was installing Python, it comes up that you're supposed to, they recommend using active CL. Having active CL installed. And so, and it's governed by some.
Can I just look at yours in a few minutes with you? Okay.
What are we going to cover in the next section?
What are we going to cover in the next section? We can do pretty much whatever you guys want. If you want to put things in that Facebook group and tell me what you're interested in. I was going to cover file input output. I was going to talk about what libraries are useful and cool. Things like SciPy, NumPy. We could do OpenCV, scikit-learn, whatever you guys want. If you don't let me know, I'll just pick some selection of that. Let me make sure I didn't have anything else cool in here. Yeah, probably just things like that. Maybe goes through some more examples, questions. Yeah, we can do that. I already have those installed on my machine. They weren't too bad, but the download was kind of big. I'd have to look at it. That's my guess. Yeah, I'm gonna put that up online. I mean, I don't know if you saw it. It does have to be.
Should I keep things hidden from me?
Yeah, I'll put it.
Try to hide your
I'm gonna put it where you can put it. Okay. Firefox.
It's like the cells off the side. Just ask me. Dude, this is for your other class, right? Yeah. Just like write it down. Hey, just general curiosity. It's really interesting haptics. Seriously. I used to do that with Walsh. Like, communications.
Python workshop starts on my graduate course. No, I did that. Yeah, stupid fear. If you want, I have homework 5. Oh. Yeah, no, that would not have been my favorite. I actually didn't quite get homework 5 to work correctly when I did it, but I have that, which is close. His example of it has the spacing is just not quite right. I have a different spacing. When I did it, the spline thing was also still extra credit, which was nice. So that, I was very upset when I heard that you changed that to not extra credit. Yes. It's not too hard. It's pretty quick.
There's small code if you want. If you are paying something to go, please help yourself.
Yes. Doing well. A little of both. I'm a student, but I'm also a teaching assistant. So